Hi, I'm Stacy Anderson, also known as the Supergene. Having lived in 9 cities across 3 continents and counting, Supergene Unleashed features people from around the world sharing their unfiltered versions of female empowerment. With a 20-year global career in digital marketing, operating as a leader and mentor, and now as a wife and mother of 3, I encourage you to unleash your own Supergene and become the most empowered version of yourself. Here is your advocate, ally, and confidant. I am ready to inspire you. Let's show the world what it's all about. Welcome back, my fellow Supergenes. Are you ready for a shocking statistic? 75% of people, 3 out of 4, have some degree of public speaking fear. And women, we experience it at nearly double the rate of men. Double. I'm sure that you can think of a time where you wished you had said something, but you didn't because you were simply too afraid. And this fear is costing us women so much. Missed promotions, pitches we never gave, stages we never stepped onto, meetings where we had the best idea in the room, yet we stayed quiet. I've been thinking about this a lot because I believe one of the most powerful things a woman can do for her career, her business, and her life is to use her voice with authority. Not to perform, not to be perfect, but just simply to speak and be heard. Today's guest is Josh McCartney, and he has dedicated his career to making that happen for thousands of people across more than a decade of coaching. He's a 2-time TEDx speaker, the UAE's go-to public speaking coach, and someone who has sat across from both men and women and watched exactly what holds each of them back. He runs Thrive, a training company that has helped over 1,000 professionals find their voice on stage, in the boardroom, and online. I wanted him on the show today because I want a direct conversation about what is really going on for women when it comes to speaking up. I want to know what Josh has actually seen after years of coaching men and women side by side. Josh, welcome to Supergene Unleashed.
Stacy, what an intro. Wow. I think I need to hire you to every single room that I walk into, every Zoom meeting I attend. This is fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited for the conversation.
I wanted to give the tee up about who you are because you have coached so many different people. And just before we hit record, you said something that I didn't know, which is that most people are actually less afraid of death than they are about public speaking.
Yeah, it's mental. Public speaking is ranked above the fear of death. It's something like 75-76% of people experience the term called claustrophobia, which is the fear of public speaking. It's something that I never expected to be doing myself. I was a shy kid who was so shy that you'd lock yourself in your room when your family come for a family reunion. To be doing what I do now, they've got a whole story behind how it all occurred and everything like that. But be doing it now is absolutely insane. For those people who think that maybe it's not for them, or some people do it, but it's not me. Some people are born confident. I'm here to tell you that it's not true because I am a living example that you are able to overcome this fear of public speaking. There's a little tiny snippet of me that's going to get into that a little bit later.
One of the things that I wanted to dig into is what actually happens when someone walks in the door absolutely terrified. What is happening behind the scenes? What is the real root of it for why people are so afraid of public speaking?
What I've taken from different resources is that if you think about humans, whether we're evolved, we are supposed to stick together. We're supposed to bind together in tribes. If you were to separate from a tribe, you're essentially saying, I am risking dying. Because if you're not in the band, not in the tribe, not in that circle, and you go alone, you could be attacked by a lion. You could be attacked by a neighboring tribe, an unallied tribe. And it just means essentially you're going to die. If you were to hop outside of that tribe in that safe space, you are essentially welcoming death. You're essentially welcoming death. In terms of public speaking, what you were doing is you were stepping outside that tribe and you are willing to be attacked. You are saying that I am willing to be ostracized. I'm willing to go spend this time alone in order for me to get my opinion across. So when you're up in front of people, that's all your body is doing. It's saying, I'm afraid I could die from this, literally. Even though thousands and thousands and thousands of years later, it's obviously not going to happen. And it's still a biological fear within most of us.
Yeah, I know. It's really crazy. Even from my own experience, for instance, I wasn't always so comfortable with public speaking. And oftentimes I could feel my temperature rising and my skin would turn red. So it's not just a biological experience in the sense of emotion, it's actually physical as well. And a lot of people experience physical aversions to it. Have you seen that come about from the people that you work with, that they also have a physical impact?
I've done this a little while now. I've worked with quite a few people. It's a very predictable experience to watch and to witness. The way that we train people, we do boot camps where we'll do 2-day events. And during the start of that event, people will come in, different experience, different backgrounds. Some are petrified of public speaking. Some aren't petrified, but they just need more structure. You get those people every single time we do it. The ones that are so shy, they are shaking as they're walking up in front of people. Literally shaking. Their mouth is quivering and you'll have their eyes starting to tear up and they go to speak and nothing comes out. This is the level of fear that people do get in the start of the trainings. By the end of those 2 days, they are like, raise your hand if you want to do this thing, everybody. And they're broken out of that shell. And the experience for me is so similar because I know what's happening and I know how to help people in that position, right? I'll come next to them and I'll just let them feel the feeling of standing in front of people. See their eyes staring and piercing them. Feel that feeling and recognize nothing's going to happen. And then I'll get you to breathe through it. And you'll know what to say already because we've worked on your message and we've worked on what your first question lining is. But I'll stand near you and then we'll take a deep breath together and we'll get it together. And then as I notice you're a bit more comfortable, I'll step away a little bit. And then I'll allow you that space again to feel it again. And then I'll step away a little bit until the point where you're able to manage it. It's like giving you training wheels and taking them off slowly. And then what happens is I'll say, okay, you're ready. I'll ask you. And I'll start speaking. And then every single time we train people, whenever you do some sort of action towards speaking in front of others, we all clap. Everybody claps every single time. You get so sick of clapping that your hands are hurting by the end of the weekend. But what that's doing is it's reassociating that feeling of speaking in front of others. Because most of us, we might have that experience like when I was in university, that I actually froze in front of the classroom that I was in. The hands were shaking so much, the paper, I couldn't even read it because it was shaking so much. I had that experience. And that was my first experience of public speaking. So you can imagine, I wouldn't exactly want to do that again. My association is humiliation. My association is fear. My association is ostracization. My association is just a horrible experience. So every single time you speak in front of people, even if it's just giving feedback about what you liked in that session, we clap. What you're doing is you're rewiring. People tell me by the end of that weekend that I'm so excited to go and do this again.
Really?
Yes. It's insane, but it's the same process every single time. So you get so many different levels to answer your question.
I want to back up really quickly. You talked about your coaching and how you approach it. What's changed for you in terms of how did you become a confident public speaker? Because I've encountered some women that sometimes think that either it's a trait you have or you don't. Is this something that everybody can overcome? Do you feel devoutly about that because you are a living and breathing example of overcoming that fear?
I do feel devoutly about this because it's something I've witnessed over and over again and something that I've shown over and over and over again. It's something that it's a predictable process. Typically, if you're not good at speaking, you don't know the skill of speaking. There are structures to follow to predict a good speech. You don't hop up and hope that you give a good one. You have the recipe and cookbook for a good speech. If you're going to start creating a dish in cooking, you'd start with the recipe. Maybe you might not do it great the first time, but you've got an okay dish. Maybe you burnt one spot too much, or maybe you didn't add enough salt or sugar or spice. Then you do it well and you get good at that cooking ingredient list and you get really good at putting it together. What happens is later you come and you add your own spice into it. Now you know how to create your own speech and you create your own authenticity towards the speech. One element is to be able to know what to say and why to say it, where to say it, how to say it, because that is the skill of speaking itself. And then it comes to things like how to hold attention from the audience, because even small things like where you shift your body either gains or loses attention from the audience. So you know that if you stand in the front on the right, you turn diagonally to the left of the back of the room, and that holds attention from everybody straight away. Once you start implementing those tiny little skills over time, you know that you can walk into any stage in any room, any presentation, and say, I know exactly how to do this because I've done it so many times before. Regardless of if you think it's something that some people have or some people don't, this is a trainable skill, and skills are trainable in themselves. So learn the skill. There's only a few parts of the speaking game, I promise you. Once you get good at it, you can hop in any room and it's fine.
I absolutely love the optimism and the fact that you have witnessed so many people conquer this transformation. I really want to dig a little bit deeper, specifically when it comes to women, and understand what some of the patterns are. What have you seen with them when they approach public speaking, and what actually is keeping them silent? What are the things that women don't realize that they're doing that's also holding them back?
I see a lot of people holding themselves back because what if they don't listen to my message? Who am I to share this information? There's other people out there that are more qualified to speak on this stuff than me. There's so many people out there that are already talking. It's oversaturated. And there's already so many people out there doing it. Who am I to share these things? A lot of it, that's self-doubt. A lot of that imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not good enough. I don't fit in here. Women specifically that I've noticed, it's a bit of that self-doubt. It's that fear to stay silent instead of growing to expand into that room that you're in. A lot of women that I've seen have also then stopped themselves from doing opportunities, even things like TEDx's they've turned down, panel discussions they've turned down because they don't want to hop in front of that room. They're afraid to mess up and say the wrong thing and they'll be judged by it. I think a lot of women have that fear of guilt or shame or judgment that when you hop in front of the audience and say the wrong thing, then that's going to brand a mark onto you as that person for the rest of their life. It's just not true. The audience are rooting for you. People do want to hear your message. The only thing you need to learn how to do is to put it into the form of a story in a structure that will make an impact. I've seen people go from so shy, they're hiding essentially with their entire body language when they first enter the events, right? And then a few months later, they'll get an opportunity like a keynote. We had this one lady, Cynthia, she got her first keynote, and I'm your biggest supporter if you sign up. I'm at your keynotes, I'm at your talks, I'm wherever I can to help you. And I watch her do her story in one of the first sections of her talk. It's a room of about 200 people. They stand up and give her a standing ovation after her story. And this is the kind of girl that was shrinking only a few months before. But it's not that she changed. She still had that message she wanted to share, that light that she wanted to give to others, but she was too afraid to do it. We just taught her how to do it. And when you learn how to do it, you couple it with the things that you already know. You just place it into a formula. It works. 1 + 2 = 3 every single time.
Do you notice that, for instance, men and women, do you see differences when you compare them side by side in terms of how they approach public speaking? Are men typically a little bit more aggressive and willing to go after the public speaking opportunities?
Sometimes. It also depends on who I attract as a coach as well, because you attract what you are as well. I'm not the super dominant male kind of guy. I will get some guys who will try to be egoic and show like, I can do this straight away. And then they'll get humbled real quick. Once you start the practice, you realize that everyone's just in the same sort of boat. You'll get guys being like, I will go and do this. And straight away, they're a bit nervous, they're a bit shy, and I'll correct myself. I do notice a bit more ego in the guys. The women are typically a little bit more ready and susceptible for information. When I'm training the guys, I typically need to assert the dominance in the beginning quickly, and then they will listen for the rest of the weekend. For women, typically they'll trust implicitly from the start. So I prefer in the beginning to train women. After a couple of hours, the guys chill out and they realize I'm not a threat or something like that, and then they're ready to listen with the information. In terms of going out after stuff, it depends on background. A lot of the time, some of the backgrounds that people have had will decide whether or not they'll go out and take those opportunities, or if they're just willing to embarrass themselves.
Exactly. I can imagine. Obviously, we both live in Dubai and it's such a melting pot. So, coming across multiple different cultures, you encounter almost everything. Is there anything that men do in particular when it comes to public speaking that women could genuinely learn from? Not saying that they should become a man or to strive to be a man, but like something that they tend to do that is gold standard, as you say, when it comes to public speaking.
I think men will typically jump and commit a bit louder, a bit faster than women will. Women will hold back and shrink a little bit and use a bit more flirtatious body language to distract from the message. And what that means is they'll put their hips out a bit more, or they'll try to hide a bit and be a bit more flirtatious, because if they mess up with their words, at least they can fall back on the body language. Men will typically just jump straight in, be a bit louder, and be willing to not know what they're doing properly and risk embarrassment a little bit more. I think women, when they start doing public speaking, they think that if they speak louder, it means they're more aggressive and dominant and masculine. There's a difference between loudness without melody and sounding aggressive than loudness with melody and sounding trustworthy and authoritative. I want to speak really loudly and I don't have melody in my voice, then it just sounds like I'm really angry. This is what happens when you don't use melody and emotion within the tone. So context matters. And when you start, especially with females that I've worked with, most of them will shrink their voice a little bit lower. You'll need to learn to commit to speak louder, even 1 to 2 points higher out of 10, to get into the habit of speaking louder. When you start to speak louder, you open up with body language. When you open up with body language, you speak more with certainty. And as you start doing that, people start to naturally trust you more anyway. But what women think in the beginning is if I speak louder, then it's just more aggressive. It doesn't have to be the case. Once you learn how to do it with melody, you can sound great a bit louder and just jump straight in.
You bring up a point that is such a fine line, and that is how delicate it can be for a woman to manage her voice. Oftentimes, women are told that they're too aggressive or too this, too that, and we get a lot of flack if we do speak with vindication and we speak louder or we speak with determination. There's this fine line where women sometimes are viewed as aggressive, and you rightfully called this term out. And that's the struggle that I think a lot of us women are constantly facing. And we think about it before we speak, or sometimes we don't. Like, for instance, me, sometimes if I'm really passionate about something, I will speak loudly and I have a lot of emotion and it just really comes across. But sometimes people can interpret that as being too direct or being aggressive, even though in my heart, that's not at all what my intention is with my message. And yet I've seen men say almost the same thing. And now I'm talking about in a career context or in a work context where I've seen men deliver a very similar message. And he has that affirmative voice. He does speak a bit louder. I have the visual image of the body language that you described, and he's perceived as a strong leader, decisive. And there's all these positive monikers that get associated to it. We're touching on a lot of topics here, especially as well, like how nonverbal communication can support your message. But how can women navigate this? Like being loud enough, but not being too loud, and saying what we want to say, but not coming off as aggressive.
There's a lot to say in terms of speaking context, because context is one of the most underthought of elements with speaking. The reason why you speak matters. What you're trying to get across matters. And most people are reacting with communication than being assertive with their communication. We've probably heard those things before. But what that means is when you're speaking louder, you're probably in an aggressive state. You're probably frustrated that people aren't listening. And that frustration carries through to your message and delivery. But what you have to learn how to do is intentionally use that emotion instead and use that emotion as the guiding light. So if I really wanted to be curious, and people are really curious right now, Stacey.
Yeah.
I'm making you feel really curious by the way that my emotion is coming off here. And Stacey, what's up? Hey, see how you instantly feel a little bit differently when I change my emotion when I speak.
Yeah.
Now I'm a little bit more serious, so you're listening intently. And I'm holding my space there. So it's like, oh, shit, he's serious. So depending on what you want the response from the audience to be, will have to be determined by the emotion you put out in the context of your voice. When people are able to start playing around with the tonality and the emotion and the intention behind their message, then people start to respond differently. But most people are reacting with their emotion rather than using their emotion to get the reaction from others.
Yeah, that's very true. And for the people that might just be listening, you also changed your body language when you just changed your tonality with me to prove your point. You know, when you were curious, you came leaning in a little bit more to show that closeness and the connection. So even though we're recording this virtually, I could still feel your body language through the screen. And I think that that is something that's very important that women should think about when they're delivering what they want to say, because we are judged so much when it comes to the moments that we speak up. We've somewhat touched on it, but men often command a room a little bit differently. Do you think that that's a learned behavior? Or do you think that like women are capable of creating the same authority and presence within the room? And what can a woman do so that the moment that she does open her mouth, she's perceived as also having a bit of command and authority in the room? But again, not aggressive, but still being able to be heard.
Positioning can matter. So positioning just means the way that you're viewed by yourself, by others. So if you look on your social media, how are you positioned? Are you positioned as an authority, or are you just using a little cutesy and some photos in a bikini on the beach or something? Are you walking in a way that you're giving everyone way too much time, way too much attention, or a little bit so that they want more? When you walk on, are you open and using your entire body, or are you shrinking and using small amounts? When you're on stage, are you closing your body language off, or are you using the stage? Are you using your entire body? The way that you get response from people, these aren't things that people just naturally have. Maybe they've naturally done it accidentally and they've created it, but they're still doing things that are getting those responses from people. So if I want to lose attention from the audience, I would stop using all my tonality. If I want to lose attention from the audience, I would stop using my body language. If I want to lose attention, I would start using a lot of ums and ahs. I am creating the experience that people are getting every single time. So if you want to be able to command a room when you walk in, find the women that are doing it. Notice what are they doing that I'm not. What does their Instagram look like? Or their LinkedIn? What do they look like? What suits are they wearing? Or what floral dresses are they wearing in different spaces? Things matter. Regardless of how you feel about it, I'm sorry if you don't like it, but these happen. People do judge you based on how you look. We have visual and vocal image. Okay, one good point here. We have a visual image, which is how when you walk in the room, people see you and they are creating beliefs about who you are. Instantly, they're creating a belief. They're creating assumptions about a belief. Okay, it might be like that. She's wearing a suit. She might be serious. She's wearing a floral dress. She might be cutesy. They're creating assumptions. And then what happens when you start moving and you start walking? They're creating more assumptions. How you're walking. Are you confident or are you a little bit shy? Are you closing off or are you asserting yourself? We're creating assumptions. Then, as soon as you go to speak, if you have a really soft and timid voice, guess what? Now they're creating beliefs because of those assumptions. And the way that you speak confirms those assumptions. So depending on what response you want from the world is going to be the one you give out. Doesn't matter how you feel about this. It really doesn't. But if you wanted to have that response that you see some other women just absolutely own the rooms, study them, mimic them, use what they do and copy. You'll start to find that, oh my God, maybe it's not me. It's just the way that I'll be.
I really actually resonate with that a lot. I gave this advice to someone a long time ago, actually, on my team who wanted to move up to a much more senior position. It might sound controversial, and it probably is controversial, but the way that you present yourself definitely has an impact, whether we like it or not. You rightfully said it, that people are judging you, your appearance, how you carry yourself. And this is exactly the advice that I gave to this person. And I said that you have all the smarts and the technical capability, but I knew from the other leaders that actually she needed to step up in this domain because she wasn't perceived as the leader because of the way that she carried herself. Wasn't coming off that way. Everybody says, oh, we shouldn't judge each other based on how somebody looks, but it's just the facts. People do.
We do. If you didn't feel emotional about that, how would you use it? If you didn't have that emotion, a lot of times people are capped by how they feel about things. If you want to just recognize reality, then this is what happens. Either be offended by it or do something with it. It's a very masculine way to say, if you want to create the response in the world that you want, then you've got to become the person that you want to be. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. It's just happening.
In your program, we lightly touched on the program and how I think it's 3 days. And I just want to...
It used to be 3. We've switched down to 2, but yes.
Well, still, that's a pretty short period of time to transforms. So have you seen people come in where they're like completely on one side of the spectrum, petrified to speak, and also with the way that they carry themselves, their appearance, that by the end of it, they've just made a total 180?
There's a couple of stories that come to mind instantly. Firstly, we've had this wonderful lady called Hind, who's a local lady here in Dubai. She said at the start of the weekend that she wanted to just have a bit more confidence again. And at the end of the weekend, I always ask people, what was the favorite thing you had? What are the biggest takeaways in our house? And she just looks at me and she just starts to, her eyes just start to tear up. And she starts to say, Josh, this has been the most impactful thing I've ever done. And it's brought back a piece of myself that I thought I'd lost, that I've been yearning for so long. That creativity, that spark, that fun that I used to have when I was younger, I lost it. And this has brought it back. That's that kind of thing. Like, it's so impactful for people that it brings back who they are. We have other people that we had one guy who came in and he was a little bit shy and self-conscious, and he's a dancer as well. What he was saying was he did the first day, he went dancing that night, and the second day he comes in and he says, we have people saying that I danced completely differently. Like, I was confident and I was able to just command and lead in ways I never used to do. And then we've had women like Nicole who said that it changes every area of her life because she's gone through some hardships and she's one of the most resilient people I've ever met. And she said that and I don't like to take credit, I'm just using her word, and she's the one that did the actions to get the results. But she says that public speaking was the one thing that's helped her to set her up in the way that it's taught her how to be able to deal with difficult times. It's taught her how to communicate. It's taught her how to communicate to herself and be ready for one of the hardest situations to be able to have to go through. And people think it's just you hop on stage and you speak, but it changes everything. It changes how you show up. It changes how you speak to yourself. And the way you speak to yourself matters because it's how you show yourself to the world. And then when you start to change your body language, because you weren't even aware of it before, that you were closing yourself off in conversations. Maybe you were hiding and taking a step back. These things change. And when you start to change that, you start to realize that the world starts to change around you and people react to you differently, which means that you start getting different opportunities to show up because people see you as more capable and charismatic and more confident and more willing to take that leadership position role. And when you do and you start stepping up, more opportunities start coming. And it is really one of the most transformational processes because it changes you fundamentally. I don't know how to explain it to people in ways that they'll truly understand until they experience it. I can list off testimonial after testimonial and case study after case study all day long because we've got so many of them. But until you experience just even one shift of the way that your communication shifts everything, you won't recognize it until you do it. I have an amazing, wonderful girlfriend, just to smash that point in one more time. I have this wonderful girlfriend, and when you're in relationships and you're cutesy and you're on the couch and you're speaking a little bit softer and a little bit more like this kind of thing, like, hey, kind of thing, right? That's cutesy. The second that I put on my more male tonality sort of thing, I see her entire being shift and change just completely. I notice that the smallest shift of like me just using my tonality differently to her entire being changing. It's one of the easiest ways to kind of recognize, oh goodness, I have control of everything. If you can change and start to become the master of your body, your state, your tonality, and how you show up, it will be the most transformational process you go through.
This is so inspirational, and hearing that just shows the power of the spoken word. And I have two final questions. One is a little bit quirky because how do you portray all of this, for instance, in a text message or a WhatsApp? You literally just brought up male-female communication in a relationship and how, we've talked about all the different things that impact the power of the spoken word, the body language, what you're wearing, your tone, your facial expression, eye contact, all of these things. How does one navigate that in text messages? Or do you really hate text messages because you can't control that?
I've become very intentional with text messages, and I think using the GPTs have really helped me with that as well. Before I get into that point that I'm about to make, 7% of communication is words. 93% is nonverbal. So 7% is words, 38% is tonality, and 55% is body language. If I were to say, I think you're amazing, Stacy, this is great, I'm having a great time with you, doesn't feel like much, right? If I'm like, oh, I think you're awesome, Stacy, this has been such a great conversation so far, thank you so much, great. Now, if I were to do this, and for those listeners that can't see, I'm going to point my thumb downwards and shake my head left and right. Stacy, you are absolutely amazing. I'm having such a great time with you. The body language trumps all else. So I've become a lot more intentional with words because words do hold power. But if you're using things like GPTs, like Claude or ChatGPT or something, you start to realize that the specificity of your words that you use changes the output completely. And the better your prompts, the better the response you get. So I've started to become very, very intentional with words, not just because I know the power of them or because we use them to influence or something like that in our public speaking, but because you get a different output. If you can become more intentional with your words and your messages, you'll get a better response from it. So everything starts with you, but words, you will typically get less of a response just because of the nature of it being a word. It is less powerful than the rest of it. If you can become more intentional with text messages, great. But always realize that there's a lot of room for misinterpretation and a lot of room for miscommunication with text.
Oh, for sure. I mean, this is one of the biggest things that I think is difficult, especially for people who are dating, is that it's always up to the recipient to decipher the message. And before I was married, when I was dating, I actually hated this part of it because I literally would get so hung up on, oh my gosh, like, should I add this smile? Should I add a thumbs up? Is it a period or an exclamation point or is it a dot, dot, dot?
And then it gets to the point where it's like, well, they should just understand me anyway. I don't really care anymore. I'm just going to be me and show up exactly how I am. And if I don't get a response I want, then it's their fault.
Yeah, I think that might be the new attitude of the younger generation is more apathetic. For the woman who's listening right now who doesn't have access to coaching, but who is really, really struggling with speaking up and public speaking, what are a couple of things, or maybe even just one thing that she can implement or she can start practicing today that would help her move the needle?
Firstly, try to raise your volume from 4 to 7. Most people are speaking about a level 4 out of 10. Try to just bring it up to level 7 and think about the emotion behind when you're speaking. So when you're raising it up to a 7 and try to be more consistent with that time frame of using the 7 language, then try not to be angry while doing it. Try to be happy while you're speaking a bit louder. As you start to realize, the second you become more intentional with your language, I think people respond differently. It's a moment your life will start to change. Number 2, if you're struggling to be able to do it, you can learn some frameworks. Frameworks work. I speak in frameworks with public speaking all the time, and it gets the response that I want because they just work. I'll give you one that you can take away from this if you are listening and you don't know how to hop into a networking conversation or have a conversation with somebody that sounds really coherent. There's one framework called PARA, P-A-R-A. The P is for point. What's the point you're trying to say? I've tried the ketogenic once. That's a point. You don't need more than that. Action is, for 30 days, I tried the ketogenic diet. R is response. What happened? Reaction, response to it. I found that I lost a lot of body weight and I lost a lot of water weight and I felt smashed as hell, but I was pretty tired and it's not sustainable for me in the long term. A is ask. Have you tried the keto? What was your experience with it? Point, action, result or response into ask. If you start speaking in frameworks, you'll find that people think you're a clear communicator straight away. You start practicing frameworks and they will just work for you. That's one thing. The last, I don't want to say it because I don't want to sound like I'm selling to somebody. We have a year-long training for $270 a month, which every single month I share courses, more than just communication, but we already have 2 communication courses in there. And then we go live every single month. We have a private community that you can just ask questions and practice. I just do exactly that, which is make it more available because my boot camps are expensive, depending on what you do with it. But if it's something that you've got a couple $100 and it's the cost of a lunch for a lot of people, then you'll have a year's access to the ability to speak on it. So if that's a possibility for you, great. That's just there. That's why I'm doing this for live, is to give it more access to people where private coaching or more extensive training science is possible for them. So there's that option as well. But I hope those tips really help. There's something that if you work in any of these, you will see a result. Most people try to change too many things at once. And what happens is they get overwhelmed. And when you get overwhelmed, you stop doing it and you go back to what you're comfortable with because we're creatures of habit. So if you can focus on one thing, whether it's going to be speak for a week, do it. If your thing is find a storytelling framework and practice it for a week, do it. If your thing is going to be ask better questions, do it. If it's going to be learn some frameworks and speak them, do it. Whatever it's going to be, just do one thing at a time and practice it long enough for it to become ingrained into you and integrated into who you are. And then what you'll realize is that as you change more of the who you are things, integrate more of those things, that authenticity that you're worried about losing will just become who you are because you practice being it for so long that that's who you are. People will see you in a year's time and say, wow, you're so good at communicating. You're so confident. You're so amazing and authoritative. You're able to hop into any room and just lead it. How can you do that? You're so natural. And you're like, that wasn't natural. I worked on a lot of little skills that eventually became who I am. So it's up to you and you have the power. Speaking is a skill and skills will be trained.
I love this so much. And these tips are so practical and useful. And I especially love it because honestly, with AI, I'm sure that you see it too, but somebody who communicates just as themselves actually stands out to me now because I feel like everybody's starting to sound the same with AI, like especially with different captions and emails and things that they write. It's like, how all of a sudden is this person a good writer when I'm pretty sure a couple of years ago you weren't. So it's just actually like working on this skill. There couldn't be a better time to do it because I think that the people that really focus on improving their communication and their voice and how they present themselves, it's definitely going to make or break in the life that we are embarking on with AI becoming so prevalent and wiping out different jobs. And that actually leads me to a final question that I really want to ask. If there's someone listening who's like, oh my gosh, I have completely blown it. I tried to speak up, but I came off aggressive, or just somebody who thinks that they really can't fix their perception. Have you seen that people can use improving their public speaking as a mechanism to fix something that they maybe feel like is irreparable?
Yeah, you'll see if you learn public speaking or communication in general that things that you felt were irreparable, burned beyond belief, are fixable. If you need to fix it, if it's necessary for you to fix, or if it's a lesson and move on, speaking will change everything for you. I just feel the quicker you get better at it, the less mistakes you start to make. Everything is on the other side of communication because everything is still to deal with people. You're still dealing with people that are managing AI. You're not dealing with AI yet. The better that you get at communicating, the faster you do it, the more results you're going to get because so many people are starting to rely on AI that they're outsourcing their brain to a device. And those people are actually going to fall behind because they're going to be used by it, not using it. So right now is one of the most important times that you can ever use to get good at communication and speaking because you will stand out so much more than anybody else. Speaking matters. Learning to speak matters. Communication matters. It all matters. It's up to you to learn how to get good at it and what you want to use it. Because good speakers know how to speak, but great speakers know when to speak. And if you're having issues when it comes to speaking in relationships, probably need to learn when to speak.
I love that quote. That's such a powerful message to leave it with. Before we go, can you just quickly share how everybody can find you?
You can go to my Instagram, which is just Josh McCartney official. So Josh McCartney, like Paul McCartney from the Beatles. Maybe one didn't know about something like that. I've started, it's not Thrive anymore. It's School of Life. So School of Life official is the name. And the point of that is to teach skills that we weren't taught in school, university, or even in the workspaces. You know, how to speak, how to communicate with people, how to pitch yourself in your business and your ideas. We're getting on other experts, like how to go from unknown to luxury in the luxury space and attracting your clients. We're getting people on how to have grit and resilience in their life. My girlfriend does all the pageants and stuff like that. So she's training people on how to do posing and body confidence, and for women specifically, how to be able to feel more feminine when it comes to posing and as well as dancing and everything as well. That is probably one of the best places to be able to find me and work with me if you'd like to, because it's accessible. In terms of the one-to-one stuff, it's a lot more expensive nowadays just because my time is more limited. If you would like to come to one of the boot camps, they will also be transformational for you as well. Those are always application only because we want to make sure to cultivate a really great space for people each time. So you can go to my Instagram, Josh McCartney Official. LinkedIn, I don't check it that much, but I do have it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. And to my fellow Supergenes, if today's episode landed for you, I want you to do one thing. Just find one moment this week where you would normally stay quiet and don't. Speak up, own the room, even if your voice shakes, and give it a shot. So thank you so much, Josh. I loved every minute of this conversation.
You're welcome. Thanks for the great questions, Stacey.
Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope you feel empowered from the episode. You can connect with me at supergeneunleashed.com and on Instagram at supergeneunleashed. Please share your thoughts, and I look forward to connecting with you. And until next time, keep on shining and showing the world your super gene.